Did that catch you out? See, it caught me out. I thought it was going to go into the dun 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 dun, but it doesn't, of course. So that's from Love Never Dies. That's the opening for Beneath a Moonlit Sky, or Beneath a Moonless Sky, or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, so as Love Never Dies is now opened in London, I thought I'd give you a little review of what I thought of the music. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm only going on the music. So when I first listened to it on the day it came out, I thought it was quite tuneless. It wasn't really going anywhere, and it was a bit anticlimactic. And to a certain extent, I do still feel the same way. It hasn't got this real thematic sense that Phantom had, and it doesn't build in the same way towards this ending, and the ending is a bit disappointing. But the more I've listened to it, the more I've started to discover what it's about and started to appreciate it for what it is. And it's actually rather good for Angelo Bobba, because I don't like Angelo Bobba, and Phantom is the only one that I've ever enjoyed of his. But I do find that the music very much does get inside of you. You find yourself humming the tunes, and they're very much in your head. And I've bashed out most of the tunes on the piano, and they are good tunes. They're just not as obviously catchy as the other ones. They just sort of meander inside of you, which, to be fair, most of the show kind of meanders, but they are some really clever tunes in there, particularly, I think, Beneath a Moonless Sky, I don't know what it is, because that's actually made up of the tune of Journey to the Cemetery from the film A Phantom, which I thought was really clever, because the way he used the tune. Another one he uses the tune of is he uses the He's with me even now, your hands are all around your face, Christine is white, from Angel of Music. He uses that in a song where Christine and Meg meet, which I thought was quite clever. And he also uses the first few notes of Angel of Music, the da 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 da. He uses that in the tune as well, but with a different rhythm and harmonised differently, which is really clever. And then when Raoul and Madame Giry meet, instead of the Angel of Music tune, because they meet at the same time, they then have the dun 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 dun, which I think is really clever, and I was quite impressed with that, and I thought that worked really well, because Angelo Bobba has clearly tried to make these references to Phantom without using the main tunes from Phantom, like the dun 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 dun, or like Music of the Night, or things like that. But he has made some really, really clever references in there. Like, it's orchestrated in almost exactly the same way, and there are some bits where the strings are playing the tune, and it sounds a bit like the sort of bit between Il Muto and On the Rooftop scene, because it's just the way it's orchestrated, and you've got the same instruments there. And at the end of that song I was talking about, that's made up of Angel of Music, it sounds very much like Prima Donna, but using the tune of the song, obviously not Prima Donna, but it does sound very similar, which is quite, it's quite clever. I mean, that's quite an art to do that. So I was impressed with that. And I also, the show's main ballad, the Phantom's main song, is Till I Hear You Sing Once More, and that also is a very nice tune. And I've sort of tried working other things out, and I don't think that's taken. I do think that's an original tune, and that's, that is a good tune, and it's very The Phantom. It's quite Music of the Night-esque. It's got that sort of modulation section in the middle, and it is a bit like Music of the Night, but still sort of with this new element to it. And there's another great song called The Beauty Underneath, which the Phantom also sings, which is another rock ballad, kind of with the heavy electric guitars, which is even more modern than the Phantom of the Opera song was. And I think that works really well, because it shows the Phantom's sort of more rocky, kind of rebel-esque side, and that's a really nice song. But I do think that the show is missing a lot, which is a shame, because it's got all those really nice elements to it, and I can imagine that it's very, very spectacular. I mean, it's cost something like 30 million or something, I might be wrong, but that's what I heard, which is a ridiculous amount. So it should be really spectacular, but it is missing just a few elements. Like, in the original Phantom, the Phantom, he kills, he murders, he steals Christine, and he threatens to kill Raoul, and he generally terrorises everyone. I mean, he causes a chandelier to come crashing down to the ground. But in this one, he just seems a bit wet. He doesn't seem to do anything. he just sort of makes a kind of pathetic deal with Raoul, and then Raoul just kind of goes with the deal. There's no threat, there's nothing. And I just think, oh, that doesn't really sound like the Phantom. And the whole storyline, I think, is a bit weak. What I think would have been better would have been if the Phantom had raped Christine down in the dungeons. That would have been more believable, to be honest. Because she does talk about her being, his lust for blood being fulfilled, and now was she going to fulfill his lust for flesh. Do you remember that line? Yeah. So I was expecting that, but it was consensual, which I thought was a bit weird. And I really don't like the ending at all. The ending is so weak. And Meg is completely and utterly mad, which was also very strange. And Madame Giry as well, she's equally mad. And not only that, but everyone has American accents except Madame Giry. She's French. She's the only one who's French. They've all come from France. They've all moved from France to America. But she's the only one who's retained her French accent, and it's really strong. I don't understand what the significance of that is. Why they couldn't have all spoken with a French accent or all with an American accent. It doesn't matter. I mean, if Christine can talk with an American accent and we can still know she's French, why can't Madame Giry? It's just silly. But the main thing that I think really, really lets the whole show down is the lyrics. The lyrics are pretty dreadful. I mean, I can understand writing lyrics that don't rhyme. That's fair enough. But there is an art to writing lyrics, and I think making them rhyme helps. It just helps, it flows better, because obviously, because musical phrases answer each other, generally speaking, because to make it sound sort of normal and finished, you've got phrases that answer. So it makes sense to have the lyrics that fit that and that answer each other, and the best way for them to answer is if that they are similar structures and therefore end in the same way, so rhyme. And that just really helps it to flow better. And it's a real art to be able to make something rhyme without it sounding silly. And I think Stephen Schwartz had that down to a fine art, and I think the original lyrics of Phantom were brilliant because they rhymed, but they didn't hinder the story in any way. And you don't really notice that they're rhyming because they're such good rhymes. And I think it's a real shame that these ones don't rhyme at all. And I think it really lets it down because you really notice it. And it doesn't feel quite right when you're listening to it. And there's a bit too much libretto. And another thing that I hate is these little vaudeville numbers. Because obviously it's setting in Coney Island, so there are these little bits, like little sideshows that Meg's in. And they do silly little songs, which I absolutely hate. I mean, I know it's sort of harking back to the Il Muto and Hannibal of the original. But this whole sort of ragtime, silly American music just does not work at all with the Phantom. And just the whole idea of the Phantom being not in his opera house is just a bit weird. I mean, you can't imagine the Phantom without the opera house. And he seems to be out in the open a lot. I mean, he quite happily walks around Coney Island without a second's thought. Whereas you always imagine him to be this shadowy figure in the background, but he's not. Everybody knows who he is. But overall, so my main opinion is, you do have to listen to it more than once in order to really understand it, and you have to be fully accepting to it. I mean, I know when I listened to it, I was obviously going to be comparing it to Phantom. Anyone who's seen Phantom and enjoyed Phantom will be doing exactly the same thing. But you have got to let it get inside of you, and it will manifest, and I think you'll sort of understand it in a different way, because it is good music, and it does really speak to you. Particularly, I said, there's the songs I mentioned, the Beneath the Moonless Sky, and The Beauty Underneath, Until I Hear You Sing Once More. I dislike the main theme, Love Never Dies. I don't like that. It's very Rodgers and Hammerstein, a bit predictable, and there's this bit at the end where she sings the whole tune really high, and you can't expect people to understand words when they're singing that high. It's just kind of screeching. And so mad props for Sierra Boggess for doing it well, but still. In fact, the whole cast are very good. They really are very good cast. And the little boy as well, Gustav, he's very good. Considering I don't really like child actors, but he does have a very nice voice. But yeah, so you should definitely listen to it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I mean, it'll be amazing to see, I think. And I do hope it does well, and I think it deserves to do well. I mean, and obviously Andrew Lloyd Webber's pleased with it, otherwise he wouldn't have put 30 million into it. But it is a shame about the end and the storyline. I think they do let it down. It is quite anticlimactic, and the ending's a bit sort of drawn out and melodramatic, and but it's a shame. But it is good. I do recommend you listen to it, especially if you enjoyed Phantom. But do try and be as open-minded as possible when you do listen to it.